Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, the Fantasy Clown, along with Trader Dan. Just going to welcome Trader Dan into the show. We're going to look at rookie quarterbacks today and some of the 2023 rookie quarterbacks and how they fared and what they are, what we view them as now compared to maybe what we thought coming in. And I think we each had opinions of the rookie quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see how those opinions aged when we've looked at, a lot of the season, especially the fantasy regular season, and how maybe those players performed on the teams now that we saw them get drafted by NFL teams. So welcome, Dan.
Hi guys. Hey, this is your forte here, the quarterback room.
It is kind of. I think looking at all the quarterbacks that got hurt this year. I mean, when we started the year, we thought maybe there would be 3 starters from this class. When I was looking at the average draft boards, I think we had at least 4 first-round picks, and then Hendon Hooker, depending on where. I mean, it looks like his average in the 55 leagues that I drafted, and recorded the stats, about 15th overall. So could be a fringe quarterback, 1 or 2 there for the 5th quarterback. So let's dive right in and look at Anthony Richardson. And his average spot was 2 over the course of my drafts, and I have some super flex, some 2 super flex, some 2 quarterback, a lot of different things, as far as they go. But the highest he went was 1, the lowest he went was 4. So he was pretty much a top 4 pick, I think was safe to say. And just pulled up a random early drafted Fantasy Clowns Clownheads 1 league just to have an idea of where they actually went in a real draft, and have it in front of me. And I see he was the 101 taken. So, when we thought he was either the 101 or 102 probably in most of the drafts that we saw, is that where you had it at draft time, Dan? Or where did you have him?
I did. If I needed a quarterback at the 101, it was Anthony Richardson, and obviously if I needed anyone else, it was Bijan Robinson. In Clownheads, I needed a running back, so obviously I went Bijan. And then I actually had 102, and it would have been Anthony Richardson at the time, but I had traded it away towards a Jalen Hurts deal. But I wouldn't have regretted picking 102 Anthony Richardson until he got hurt. And then but injuries, that's just part of football.
Yeah, I think he started like 4 games and he had a top finish or 1 overall.
Yeah.
At least once, maybe twice. I mean, it really has produced, I think, I guess pretty impressively, really. So, I'm kind of looking to see where he was. So I have it in front of me. But I guess would you say that you think that he has fulfilled the expectation? I mean, do you think he's now looking back? I know he's only stayed healthy for a couple games, but do you feel good about him going forward? And are you buying him? Like this offseason, would you say, hey, he's a buy, or is he a sell, or is he a hold if you have him?
Here, I probably don't sell him, and I don't buy him, only because the upside we saw, right? I mean, he's phenomenal. He was in the top 5 QB rankings, 2 or 3 times. I'm trying to pull up the stats right now. But with that said, the injuries are a concern with the type of quarterback that he is, his style of play, his run first mentality, and you just hope that the Colts don't take that away from him, because that's what makes Anthony Richardson really good. But he's got to stay healthy and stay on the field. So you seem to think that there's got to be some type of trade-off, right? Are we going to let this guy go out there and do some of these things, these designed runs, and put him out there to get hurt, knowing that he's injury-prone, concussions right off the bat? Or are we going to try to turn him into a pocket passer? And I think that's where he struggles, is if he becomes a pocket passer. So it's a tough situation no matter what you are. If somebody offered me a slam dunk offer, I take it. But I don't necessarily think that I go throw the kitchen sink at him, knowing that he's coming back. I think I play it more kind of on the safe side and try to go get, put it this way: if I'm making a sales pitch toward Anthony Richardson, it's probably going to be some type of sort of same sales pitch toward I could CJ Stroud. And at this point, I would much rather have CJ Stroud, somebody who can get me a lot of fantasy points by throwing the football and not getting hurt.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of on the fence on the cheat code guys, or what I call the cheat code guys. You know, those guys that run a lot, the dual purpose, because I feel like their shelf life is just so short, and they tend to get worn down by the playoffs. And then, you know, if you don't have them week 14, 15, 16, 17, then, you know, what do you have? And you know, I guess I'm thinking back to the Lamar days. I'm thinking Jalen Hurts, you know, just these guys who seem to, you know, get hurt here when it comes down to crunch time. And so that gets dangerous. You know, and so I was looking, I have 9 shares of him. So I'll be anxious to see how I think I agree with you. I'm going to hold. And I'm kind of, so I ask you that question because you like to move guys and move them around, but I feel like what I have into him, I doubt I can recover that, you know, because I don't think he's bringing a 102. I mean, if you offered me the 102, I might take it, but I guess maybe not, because I feel like he's a quarterback and he's better than a lot of other positions, and you know, just having him keeps it a competitive edge. But I don't think I'm going to buy him for the 102. Like, I don't think I'm going to pay full price for him. You know, now if you offered him to me as second round value, I guess I'd probably take him, but I don't think that's going to ever happen. So, yeah, I mean, you know, so unless I can buy on a discount, I'm probably not going to buy a quarterback in general. So
here's the thing: if you're going to take a quarterback at 102 in this year's draft, chances are it's going to be Drake May. Probably, by the sounds of the way it's going to be, Caleb Williams, Drake May, 1-1-1-2. Personally, I would rather just go get Anthony Richardson at that point, but I wouldn't want to get rid of that 102 until I knew Caleb Williams was gone at 101. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'd rather have Caleb Williams, obviously, but you know, you just never know. Drake May might get drafted by, you know, whoever's got the first pick, and it's his favorite football team, and hey, it's a coin flip between Drake May and Caleb Williams to them, and Caleb Williams does fall to 102. Or somebody's just high on Marvin Harrison, they want to have him, it's their favorite receiver, they love Ohio State, they love the way he got drafted, they take him. Then you got your 102. But if you know Caleb Williams is gone at 101, you can pick Anthony Richardson up for 102 instead of Drake May. I do it all day long, and just too many unknowns with the quarterbacks to me that are coming out of this draft. I think there's going to be a lot of them, which means that there's 50% of them are bust, right? So
yeah,
it's going to be tough to tell which ones hit, which ones don't. Where at least Anthony Richardson, I was just actually pulling up his stats. He was a QB4 and a QB2, so he finished in top 5 QBs out of 4 games. But he was injured the other 2 games that he played.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the bit of a bust, and maybe over the offseason, you know, I think Tua learned how to fall. You know, that was one of the things that Tua, you know, did in his kind of, you know, after his injury-ridden season, and so far that playing how to fall and not fall on his head, I guess, has been, you know, pretty good, you know, for him. So, you know, I guess I agree with you. Looking at the 103, and it seems like everybody was taking 103. Bryce Young.
Yeah.
You know, he's a little bit undersized, but yeah, what do you think of Bryce Young? Was Bryce Young your 103 at the draft pick?
No, not at all. I was we had talked about this. I was Anthony Richardson. I got on the hype train, and then right after him, I liked CJ Stroud. He fit the model to me. You know, I like the bigger, taller quarterbacks, the oversized, the ones that can take a hit. I didn't necessarily like CJ Stroud's landing spot, but you know, I mean, he's just explosive. So I think at 103, I think the people that did take Bryce Young, or you know, kicking themselves in the butt, and the people that were sitting at 104 that were kind of hesitant about CJ Stroud and not sure that they wanted to take him, because I mean, let's be honest, everyone at 104 was thinking, you know, I'm getting stuck with Stroud, you know, and rightfully so. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where Anthony Richardson had jumped him, and you know, Stroud had that Ohio State stigma to him. People are, you know, can they be a quarterback in the NFL? And I was the same type of person. He's really performed well, and you know, the people that did take him and took a chance on Stroud are reaping the benefits, and the ones who took Bryce Young are probably in the same boat this year to get Caleb Williams.
Well, you know, you are, or you're just going to, I mean, I guess I collect quarterback. I just take the draft picks. So the draft I had pulled up, I took Bijan number 2, So, if he didn't go to 1, I was just next in line for the 102. I tended to have a lot of 103s for whatever reason, acquiring them or even drafting in that spot. And so I have 15 shares of Bryce. I was really, and it wasn't because I liked Bryce or anything. I did have him ahead of Stroud. It just was, I do tend to kind of operate with the NFL when in doubt. And I guess I thought, you know what, they traded up and went after him. They, I'm going to rely on what they saw, and they might be wrong, and maybe this time they were. I mean, I guess they also look at other quarterbacks. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that came out year one and looked really good. I guess I'm thinking of guys like Tim Tebow,
RG3,
and even Ryan Leaf. I mean, these guys. If we go back, even these guys really performed well. And then I think of guys like Peyton Manning, and I'm not trying to put Bryce Young in that category, but Trevor, guys that we just didn't have very much. They just throw a lot of interceptions. They just didn't have whatever going on. And I'm sort of putting in Bryce's camp a little bit of, hey, these they switched coaches middle of the year. Like, they didn't even figure out how to keep the coach around for half the year. So, I don't know. Like, the continuality, they had a switch in play callers after 3 games. Now they're switching back after 6. It just feels like a lot of moving parts. And it seems like Trevor Lawrence rookie year chaotic to me. It has a little bit of that. Maybe not, staying in Ohio and not going back with the team like Urban Meyer did. But, I mean, it's got some chaos to it that I guess I'm not sure. I'm not totally convinced that he's a bust. I would just say this: I'm not buying or selling him. Again, I tend to these first round picks. I feel like if I pay first round capital for them, man, I'm not going to sell them for third round capital after 1 year, because I feel like the fear of loss is there for me.
He's going to start next year. He's going to get another year under his belt.
And
so,
if he's Zach Wilson, then he's Zach Wilson, in my opinion. But at least we know I'm going to ride that out until I realize he is Zach Wilson. I'm going to ride it out and watch that watch that bust. We touched on CJ Stroud. He was the 104 in most cases. And, I was looking, I only got 6 shares of him. So I guess I didn't pick him that spot, but he was my 104. I was taking him ahead of the running backs there as well. I mean, I was just kind of 3 quarterbacks in a row. So I was always taking him. Was that where you were actually taking him at the 103? Is that right? Were you taking Bryce at 104, or were you?
No, yeah. Okay. I would have taken Bryce Young at 104, but I had Stroud. I would have taken Stroud over Bryce Young.
Yeah, you would have taken Stroud at the Stroud 3. And so obviously we're got to be kind of high on Stroud at this point, because he's sort of in the MVP conversation for the whole entire league, right? I mean, is that where you're seeing him? And Are you buying him? I mean, are you buying that because
Am I buying him fantasy or am I buying?
Well, like, what would you pay for him? Would you go out and pay 3 first-round picks for him to say, hey, I want to put him on my team and I'm going to mortgage the future?
No, but if I would trade the 1.01 for him.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good.
I would give up the rights to Caleb Williams to take CJ Stroud right now, and I'm not only the fact of I at least know what I got with CJ Stroud.
Yeah, no,
right. And I don't think if I have CJ Stroud, actually I know if I had CJ Stroud, I don't think I would trade for the 101. Like, I don't. The only way I would do that is if Caleb Williams landed on my football team and I just said, you know what, I want to play fantasy football and I want to root for my team, and this guy is part of it. And if it's a bust, it's a bust. But I go down with my team for drafting him, then I trade it. But just straight up, I'd rather just have CJ Stroud knowing what I have. And if Caleb Williams is Pat Mahomes, well, you know what? So might CJ Stroud be. So what do you got?
Yeah. I mean, I get that. That's good to put in perspective, because I think a lot of people chase the juice of the 101 and the unknown, and I think that brings a little bit of clarity to what I'm not a very good person at trading away the 101. Like, that feels, I like too. I kind of chase the juice of the unknown a little bit. I think,
Absolutely.
I think you bring a good point of saying, hey, with what you have, knowing what you have, and when you have the 101, you kind of know. Now, I sort of think that I wouldn't be shocked, and maybe I'm hitting the pipe a little bit, but I wouldn't be shocked if you couldn't get CJ Stroud and a second for the 101. Almost get CJ Stroud and a piece of something just to kind of have a fallback, or CJ Stroud and a third or something, for that 101. Like as we get to draft
top 5 quarterback, I don't know, buddy.
Well,
22 years old.
Wants to chase the hype. Like there's hype chasers, and I almost think that, very rarely do I see just one quarterback go for the 101. Like people really chase that 101. Now, Pat Mahomes probably wouldn't, but beyond he and Josh Allen, you might. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see Joe Burrow plus go for the 101. Like that wouldn't shock me at all.
It's a lot different when you have a quarterback who's coming off an injury, right? Because they kind of get forgotten about a little bit.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Joe Burrow is kind of an afterthought right now. You know what I mean? And if Jalen Hurts got hurt right now and didn't finish off the season, that he'd be discounted at the end of the year. But yeah, I don't think a healthy CJ Stroud. Now, if CJ Stroud were to get hurt and be out for the rest of the season, then maybe you do. Somebody does trade it and say, hey, you know what? Listen, it's kind of old news. He's hurt. It was fun while it lasted, but give me Caleb Williams. But if CJ Stroud finishes healthy and finishes top 5 quarterback, I don't see many people trading it. I don't, but we'll see.
And that could be right. That could be right. Will Levis looks like he averaged in the 9 spot. In all my drafts, I'm just going to take a peek here. He was the 109 in Clownheads too. So just in this particular draft I'm looking at. So he's the whole way down at 9. Where did you have him and on your draft board, and then what do you think of him now that we've seen him a little bit? He's had a good game. He's had some less than good games.
I had him right around that spot. And it was mostly I think I got him at 110. And you convinced me to take him. I actually was pulling the trigger on Laporta there, and you had told me if Will Levis is even decent, he's going to pull more than what Laporta could pull, value-wise in Clownheads. And I said, you know what, you're probably right. So I took Levis. I think Laporta would help me out a little bit more than Levis right now. But when Levis went for a touchdown game, I was like,
I think Laporta's by far more, and we'll get to that when we review tight ends. But I think Laporta's far more than anybody could have ever anticipated.
I don't disagree.
So, I mean, in fairness, if we were to compare Levis and Kincaid, then we could at least say, okay, now you'd probably rather have the quarterback than Kincaid, so.
I don't know about that either. I think I'd rather have Kincaid right now. But, I think Levis is where he was taken that late first, early second. I don't think anyone's bummed, or like, I can't believe I took this guy. Don't get me wrong. There's other guys that you probably wish you had taken. Who we could, like you said, Laporta, we didn't see that being top 3 in the league. I think Will Levis was the next quarterback there. I think that was the right pick. I still think he does have a future in the NFL. I think that he's got a cannon for an arm. He got a quick release. He doesn't have a ton of weapons, but he doesn't need a ton of weapons. He just doesn't need to turn the football over. They run the ball and they play good defense. And I think if he can just kind of, materialize more like a Tannehill was when he was, playing at a top level, then, I think Will Levis will be a very, very nice pick for people who picked him late in the first, early second.
So I actually had him, especially in the Clownhead draft, I had him ranked number 7 on my list. So I was drafting him a little bit ahead of that 9 spot, just because I do value quarterbacks and their ability to score 40 in my leagues, probably quicker than most other guys, can score 40. And I guess that's really where it was. And so naturally what that did was it got me 25 shares. So, 15 shares of Bryce Young, and then lot less of Stroud but I've got a ton of Levis. And early in the year, I sort of learned a valuable lesson, I think. I don't think you need to draft him that high because early in the year, I could have bought Will Levis for quite a bit less than a first-round pick. Yeah. And let's be honest, I knew Tannehill was going to start. So there was no reason for me to think – very rare, unlikely situation that we were going to have the Mac Joes take over for Cam Newton's situation happen in Tennessee, in my opinion. So I probably should have left other people draft him and taken the Laporta pick, like kind of thing in hindsight, but just anybody in that range, if it was a receiver or whatever, and then came back and bought Levis on the cheap with one of my seconds in 2024 and just kind of bought on the cheap. He's going to get a spot to get him and bought him off the taxi. And so
quarterbacks are a tough position to project.
What was that?
The quarterbacks are a tough position to project.
Well, and you just don't know. I mean, so, that'll take us to our next guy. And he was like a fringe late first, early second, and that's Hendon Hooker. And so as we sit here today, what do you think you could buy Hooker for? Or would you be buying Hooker?
I'd buy him. I'd buy him all day long.
Good, right? He's good at football, and when he gets his shot, it's going to be.
Well, he's on probably the best in my book, with the exception of maybe the 49ers or so. He's got the best weapons in football overall. You see what Jared Goff's been able to do with that team, and I'll tell you, that organization, they nail their draft picks one after another, after another, after another. They just seem to find the talent, and I think they were high on Hooker, and I think they nailed it with him. The unfortunate thing with Hooker is he's going to need a Jared Goff injury to take Jared Goff's position, but what I always say is a starting backup is worth a second round pick, right? So now you got a guy who we all took in the second round. He hasn't. How can he lost his value? He's going to be the backup quarterback to Jared Goff.
So let me ask you this, would you buy with your 2024 thirds, like around draft day, would you just send the 2024 third, to the Hooker owner for maybe a fourth and Hooker and just
I take him straight even for Hendon Hooker.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is you could probably produce during the draft, say, hey, anybody want this pick? And you kind of get the Hooker owner on the hook. Yeah, he wants it. Well, just give me a fourth and throw in Hooker, by the way. And you think it'd probably be something that would come your way.
Absolutely tickled pink.
Yeah.
And even if he doesn't play next year, that's okay. He's going to get his shot.
So, and you feel like it'll have the Jordan Love situation where it might not be in 2020 or 2021, but some point he'll get a shot to play NFL football. And
yeah, and I think it's probably more or less going to come down to injury.
Yeah,
and he could essentially play well enough where he doesn't give the job back. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be more likely than. All right, Jared Goff, you're done. We got Hendon Hooker. He's the future of this franchise. I don't. Right. I think they still think Jared Goff's the future. I just think they want to make sure that they have the backup quarterback position solved because, as you can tell, how many rookie quarterbacks have gotten to start because of injuries? Yeah,
no, all kinds. And so here I took Hendon Hooker with my 202. So I guess what I'm hearing you say is, hey, that made some sense. Now, we were kind of laughing about, whether you should take tight end, but I see Laporta was the 207. So I did pass on Laporta, taking Hendon Hooker. So in hindsight, obviously we make bad decisions, if you will, but having the 202 for Hooker probably made sense. And
it made sense then, and I don't
at the time,
he hasn't lost that value. I mean, he hasn't lost that value in my book. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So he's where you thought he'd be. I'm just gonna glance over some, and so you feel like he's a buy. You have him on the kind of buy list.
Oh yeah, especially with that Detroit Lions team.
Yeah, and just kind of gonna look at some other quarterbacks that we were drafted. Stetson Bennett, he was average of 31, so basically third round, 7th pick. What do you think of him? Is he gonna play football anymore?
I regret it. He's already old. He came out of college old. There was talk about the Rams. They were trying to trade Matt Stafford early, before the year or whatever. There was things coming out of training camp that this guy's a real deal. He's legit. You bought the hype. You know what I mean? I mean, you bought it. And I don't know what's going on in his personal life that he's not part of the team. It's really none of my business. I don't care. But I just wish I didn't have any shares of him because to me, what's he going to be, 26 now?
Yeah, and he's not even on the team. I mean, I think it's over. I mean, and like you. I mean, back in May when he just got drafted. I mean, I was taking him at that spot.
Yeah, well, Stafford coming off all those injuries, I figured Stetson Bennett would have a shot by week 6.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know,
I mean, I guess
honestly,
that's where I was with it.
yeah,
So I like you. I am kind of willing to punt him if I do. Now I have 21 shares, so I guess I was pretty high on him, but so I still have 21. I might have even dropped him a couple places because I just got, just sort of tired of what we were dealing with there, and he was a drop as we were going. Jake Haener, he was at the 48th, so the very end of the 4th round. If you were, wanting quarterbacks, he was kind of there. That was the average that I saw for him. New Orleans, I mean, it doesn't seem like he's even a thought in their mind. I mean, Jameis, Taysom, Derek Carr, it just doesn't seem like.
And Derek Carr's just signed a massive contract, so
yeah, same basic spot, 48 overall. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I know you were high on him at the draft, and you were taking him. What are your thoughts now seeing him start? Or
tickled pink. I got him where I did. He fell in the real draft, and so that obviously means he's gonna fall in the dynasty draft. But he fell in the perfect position where he was able to. He's in a run first offense, a lot of read option, which plays to his advantage. We all kind of had our doubts about Deshaun Watson, not necessarily his talent, but just can he stay healthy, coming off the long suspensions and stuff like that. There's kind of a lot of unknown with him. And I think with DTR kind of falling into that position, it made him a little bit more valuable because it was like, there's a chance that he could really play. And I think that people that got him in the 4th round, end of the 4th round, right, at beginning of the 5th, they got great value for the guy. I mean, I can tell you right now, I went after him in Clown Heads, and I was all the way into the 3rd round draft, offering 3rd round draft pick for the guy with another backup quarterback, because the guy wouldn't budge. And
I'm gonna. So as we're filming this, we're not quite knowing, I guess, in my mind, who's going to start this week. If it's going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson or if it's Joe Flacco, and I'm going to kind of leave it. My opinion of him is this: if Joe Flacco starts over a healthy Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I don't believe that he'll have a future in the league. And I would tell you that in the offseason, freaking unload him, because that's kind of my take. If he starts over a healthy Flacco, like if they decide, you know what, we're going to take him to the playoffs and he's our playoff quarterback, then I would tell you that he's got a chance to be a backup, which has some value. And I think I would, because backups can become starters at some point, and that makes sense. But if you can't beat out Joe Flacco for this playoff run, then I would tell you that Joe Flacco was on the couch 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, I feel like, okay, that tells me that you're Kellen Mond. And it doesn't mean you don't have talent, because Kellen Mond had a ton of talent coming out, but he just never got an opportunity that he seized. And that looks like the path for me. Like, whatever I think is, kind of irrelevant, but that's where I guess I would put him.
He played excellent before he got hurt.
Yeah.
In that game. And I think that's going to constitute him getting another chance. Because Joe Flacco, he didn't do. He did. I mean, they got pumped. I mean,
I think they were happy with him, And I guess I always say, hey, it's kind of how did you come in the locker room? How did the guys think of you? No, I thought he pumped the ball too. Eli Moore, and that was pretty. It was pretty easy to see that was going to happen. So that was kind of that. Looking at Aiden O'Connell, I mean, he's getting a shot to start now. Yeah. I kind of, obviously with a regime change, they might be drafting a quarterback. So I guess in my mind, I feel like that's where that franchise would go. And so I think he's another guy that I wouldn't sell for nothing, but I might sell him. You'd laugh, because I would probably sell him as cheap as I'd sell a starting quarterback. He might bring me a 2nd and a 4th, and I might try to spin it into the next one, and then have a fallback of him. Like I get the fourth for where I drafted him, and then I'd pull a second as a profit, and now I've got something that no matter what the outcome, I'm good kind of thing. What do you think?
Well, you have another couple chances. Yeah, boy, he's a tough one. He's a tough one to because he's played well enough where he's intriguing. It almost kind of feels like the whole Sam Howell thing, right? He got drafted late. It's like you look at him and it's like, okay, I can see where the team likes him. I can see where he could be a starter. But right now I can get value for him. so you kind of trying to hedge your bet, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing that goes with Aiden O'Connell. I think the Raiders, they go after a quarterback. I think they go after a quarterback. They're going to be in that early to mid rounds where, a trade up to go get their guy, whoever it is, Bo Nix, it could be Jaden Daniels, it could be whatever. They're going to be there where it's not going to. They're not going to have to mortgage the franchise to go get their guy, as long as it's not one of the top two guys. And I think that the Raiders are that type of organization that are just kind of like, hey, we're done with the Derek Carr, we're done with the Jimmy G's, we're like, let's go get our face and try to do this. So yeah, I think I'm with you, Ed. I think I would try to recoup whatever I could for him right now. If it's a good package, I would definitely take the profit and cash out. And
then Clayton Tune, right around that end of early fifth as well, 50th. Yeah. He had one start earlier in the year. I don't know if we saw enough to. It seemed like he was a little bit overmatched, and
but I still think he gets a chance to be the backup next year.
Yeah, could be.
And so he's worth a roster stash. He's definitely not. To me, if I had Kyler Murray and I had, and I'm short on quarterbacks, I come draft time, I might, throw my fifth back at the guy who drafted him and say, hey, why don't you just shoot him over my way or fourth or whatever, you know what I mean? And that way you got the handcuff to him and having the handcuff on your quarterback gives you a little bit more flexibility in my book. If you got another quarterback you can move or whatever, if you need to make a position.
Still, I actually don't like handcuffs on my own quarterback.
I know you don't.
Just because I feel like the handcuffs.
That's why I'm in the playoffs and you're not, Ed.
Well, no, I think the handcuffs change. Like I handcuffed Jimmy G with Hoyer earlier in the year, and I handcuffed Deshaun Watson with Dobbs earlier in the year. I do handcuff in best ball, and so every best ball handcuff I made, the handcuff is different than it was when I drafted in July, and so. That's why I said that I don't know if I like handcuffs in quarterbacks, because I think the rooms all change, so much in the pecking order of who actually is the handcuff tends to change from the early drafts. Like when I'm making these drafts, I'm doing these in May. Like I feel like the training camp and all the things that happen, it just seems like the depth chart just changes so much, and that's why I don't like to. I don't mind handcuffing now. Like now, I think it makes a lot of sense to handcuff. Now, that's when I try to do that. But anyway, I digress. Clayton Tune, we did that, and Jaren Hall. Jaren Hall had a cup of coffee in Minnesota, but they went out and got Dobbs. So that tells you what they thought of Jaren Hall. Like in my mind, they were saying, okay, we need something better.
Yeah, and there's one other quarterback that didn't get drafted that seems to be making some noise. Is Tommy DeVito. I think people who picked him up off the waivers, I wasn't one of them. I'm kicking myself in the butt. Listen, he's got a real chance to be the starter next year for the Giants. If he comes out and he can compete with Philly and he can, they got 2 games left with Philly. They got the Rams. They got some top teams in the NFC. If he can go out there and compete and even steal a win or two. With Daniel Jones not going to be 100% ready for training camp, I can see this being Tommy DeVito's chance to steal the reins. He's stealing the hearts of New York people. Not necessarily me. I'm not one of. I'm just happy. I'm happy for the guy, not necessarily the.
Yeah, I think it's a great story. I guess I kind of go on the other side of it. I think that we're closer to having Tyrod come back and actually play than. I think we're so DeVito isn't as bad as he was in that first game. and he's not as good as he was in some of these last two. And I think he's somewhere probably in the middle of that. And I guess I can see it all melting down and then them kind of calling for something. Like we'll see what happens in the next several games. I mean, but I think that once we scheme for a guy like that, once the NFL team scheme for that, I think it won't. I think it'll be less like Brock Purdy and more like Will Levis, and that won't be good enough. Like it'll be something.
We'll see. All I'm saying is he has a chance.
Yeah.
He has a chance.
I don't know, everybody. Yeah, I agree with that. Looking here at some of the other guys that so Tanner McKee and Max Dugan actually got draft capital, and both of them, to me, seem buried behind the backups in both cases. So they're number threes, and so I'm not sure that if you have them, I think you hold them because you just never know if there's depth chart flips. I mean, we'll quickly see this week, especially if Hurts doesn't play. I mean, there's a lot of rumor that he may not play, and if he doesn't, then we'll see when they give Mariota the ball, what happens with Dugan, and what we'll know a lot based on how that whole thing goes. And then
why are you saying Hurts may not play?
There was injury.
Yeah, I think he's off the injury report now.
Okay, so he practiced in full today.
Oh yeah, they got a big game against Dallas. That guy, he's playing.
Okay. Well, I just knew that there was an injury designation on Wednesday. So so I wasn't sure what there was some. The beat reporters were concerned about whether he was going to play.
Listen, I need a win to get in the playoffs. I mean, he better be fine.
Well, I mean, it comes down to. I mean, they take a very conservative approach in Philly, and that's just kind of how they do it. So
I agree, except for that loss to San Francisco killed them. They're trying to hold that home field advantage. I think they realize that's important.
Well, no, it is, and it is very. I mean,
they don't want to be going into San Francisco after getting pumped at home. They most certainly don't want to go into San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, no, I agree with that. And then I'm looking here. Malik Cunningham was not drafted, and Tyson Bagent, and both of them have seen some NFL action. I mean, in Bagent's spot, I think he played better than most people thought. I think he's played his way into being a backup quarterback.
100%.
And so I think if you are fortunate enough to have those two guys, maybe not Cunningham so much because I think he's more of a gadget, player, and I have 9 of him, and I was just kind of. But Bagent, I think I actually have a fair amount of. I mean, and those were all waiver guys. I got 25 shares of him. So I mean, it's
great.
I mean, they were $0 pickups, and you mentioned DeVito. Let me see what I have. I mean, I have 10 shares of him, so I mean, I'm not totally out of him. Like it's not like I don't like the guy. I just think that if I could cash out, I might do that because I think there's more risk than there is a reward in his case. But that's just kind of what I'm thinking in the off season. I guess I'm hoping that he does hold the job for a bit so that I can cash it in the off season because most of my trade deadlines.
I tell you, if the Giants are fully committed to Daniel Jones next year, I think DeVito gets to start next year to start the season. I do. I think he does.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see.
And you don't feel like Daniel Jones comes back right away next year. You think he's
well, look, just hearing what the GM had said. He said that, they definitely have to address quarterback, whether it's through the draft or free agency, because, with his injury being, he might not be ready to start a training camp. We'll see. I think I don't know. I don't think he's ruling out taking a quarterback in the first round. I just don't see the Giants mortgaging their future to go get a guy, especially with so many glaring holes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with that. Well, I think that covers a lot of the quarterbacks. So would love for you guys to hit the like button, put your comments in, see if you disagree or agree with Trader Dan and myself on where the quarterbacks stack up. And I think it's always helpful to look back at, okay, this is where we took them and this is what we think of them now, because in most cases, there's always a difference, right? There's always a difference in what we thought in May to now, because history's always 2020 because it's hindsight. But I think that kind of analyzing, was our process good though? And that's, we're not going to be right on the results, but we want to be kind of as close to right on the process. And I think as we outline them, the real bust of those two guys that we're saying, hey, we're not sure about. beyond, and I guess I'm thinking of Max Taylor McKee and Max Dugan. Beyond that, we have to go to real bust. We have to go back to the guy Stetson Bennett, and we were drafting him in the late third, early fourth, and so that's really not terribly bust territory. I mean, because whoever we're taking there has a chance to be a bust. So, I feel like when you're busting on quarterbacks in the third round, that in my mind could be Sam Howell too.
Yeah,
a year ago, I got so many Sam Howells in the third round because he happened to be the cheapest of that whole bunch of them, and I just kind of took him everywhere.
Top 5 quarterback.
and
Crazy.
I mean, and that was a win. That was the win. So I guess that's kind of why I go back to I like to go hard at quarterback in those late rounds. I still have 24 shares of Sam Howell, so.
Let me ask you before we leave. If
Yeah.
you got 1.01 right now, 2023 draft, who are you taking?
Oh, right now?
Right now. Redraft it. Who are you taking?
That's tough for me. It's going to be a quarterback. I mean, I'm just disappointed in the usage of Bijan, so I kind of discount him out.
Yeah, right. You
mean in clown heads, knowing what I know?
Yeah. CJ Stroud, right?
No, I'm taking Sam Laporta.
1.01.
Yeah, he's the best player. He's the best player in the draft.
Wow.
I mean, I'm getting 3-point PPR, 2 tight ends. Yeah, I'll figure out the quarterback. I could see things going wrong with DeMeco Ryan in that quarterback thing.
Sam Laporta,
I think Sam Howell's is a real deal. Like, I think his path to play. I will be shocked if he's not a top 5 tight end, barring some injuries, for 5 years straight. If that makes any sense. I would be shocked equally if we compare that to maybe CJ Stroud, if he doesn't have a year in the next 5 that he's healthy, that he's not a top 10 quarterback. I think he'll have one of those years where it just doesn't throws a lot of picks or something goes wrong or just doesn't go his way or the team around him is terrible or all those
1.01, Sam Laporta. So 1.01 this year is going to be Brock Bowers.
No, because I don't know that Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
I say Sam Laporta is such an outlier, so much better than Pitts, and Pitts had 1,000 yards, so much better than Kelsey. He's just so much better than these guys that are like. Would you rather have? I mean, this is for the tight end show, but wouldn't you rather have Sam Laporta this year than Travis Kelsey right now? Right now for the stretch run, I'd rather have Sam Laporta. I mean, just even up.
I can tell you right now. I mean, you're looking at like a 3-headed monster right now with these young tight ends. It's McBride, Laporta, and Kincaid, and that the youth movement in the tight end is phenomenal for the NFL.
Yeah, and Mayer's not far behind. Mayer's a
we'll see. I mean, Mayer, I agree. Mayer could end up being as good as
Mayer reminds me of the McBride trajectory. It's not this year.
He's getting a little bit more playing time than him, but the thing with Sam Laporta is that he was the tight end 1 right off the bat for Detroit, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah.
You're right off the bat. You're getting 80% of the snaps. You have a massive advantage. I mean, look how slow it took for Buffalo to realize, hey, Kincaid can play football. Like, let's throw him the ball once in a while.
Well, and they're going to bring Knox back when he gets back, and then it's going to be another cluster screw. Like, that's just how they do it there, unless they change coaches. So anyway, we'll get the tight ends in a future show.
Yeah.
So we're going to break down. We did just in the quarterbacks, but we're going to break down running backs, receivers, and then tight ends in the rest of this series. So, over the next couple of weeks, just stay tuned, and we'll break down those positions as well. And, we know Trader Dan likes the tight end position, so that'll be fun if we argue about those kind of things. But
wide receivers too, Ed. Wide receivers, baby.
Yeah, no, and I guess I'll throw shade at all that, but at all those because that's what I do. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll look to bring back one of those other positions as our second highlighted position, and stay tuned for that and put your comments in there. Tell us how we're wrong. Tell us how you would trade the guys that we said don't trade and how much you'll get for them. So look forward to that feedback as well. And we'll see you next time.
Good night.